Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wait, Hold Up, What? As we have told you, we were going to bring back the great GIna Jacobsen to talk money and women, and here she is. So, welcome back, GIna.
Thank you, Dawn, for having me. I'm excited to be back.
Yes, so this time, well, hold on. For those of you that don't remember or didn't listen to the other one, but of course are going to go back and listen, my guest is GIna Jacobsen, and she is a certified financial planner or wealth manager, however you deem to address that type of title. And she works at Vision Capital Management, which is a woman funded wealth management firm here in Portland, Oregon. And we have been talking about wealth and women and just what it means and access and opportunity and all those things. But when we were doing our prep, we started talking because I'm going to call a spade and say that both you and I are a little nerdy about women and gender and issues around money in very interesting ways. And we started talking about everything that's happening right now. So, all of this DEI stuff is happening, and with it is coming all these protests, right? And people boycotting certain companies and certain things and realizing, wait, what's happening? In the process of that, some of these companies have been letting go, if you will, of the brands and businesses that have helped them build over the last 5 or 10 years that were led by women and communities of color, if you will, and dropping them without a lot of notice. And that has sparked some of these boycotts and what's going on. And I'm all in the mix with that because that's just who I am. I am woman, hear me roar, right? And it got you and I started to talk about how consumerism targets women and that through that targeting, it is this really subtle or not so subtle way of preventing women from wealth growth or establishing generational wealth and really building maybe a portfolio of wealth that they might otherwise do because of how that consumerism is targeted. And so I know that was a lot, everybody, but that's what we want to talk about today. And so I'm not even actually sure what question to start with in this subject matter, but I had never talked to another human and mentioned that and had their eyes light up the way that yours did. So I guess I want to say, why did your eyes light up so much?
Well, it's a topic that fascinates me. Over the last couple of years, I've started learning more about feminism and reading some of the books that were written in the last, 100 years, and learned a lot about how women are targeted, and how women are um, taught to take on all of these roles and these duties that are fulfilled by buying things in order to maintain an image or maintain a role. And by doing so, be good, to be a good woman. It's almost like um, a moral reasoning for why a woman needs to do this. An example would be, back in the 1950s, the housewife who her role was to keep the home spotless. At the same time, the rise of that was paired with advertisers wanting to sell all these new products, sell, newest vacuum, all these tools that could help her keep her home immaculate, and that was the best possible thing that she could do. And so she would spend her money, her time, her energy on this cycle, a never-ending cycle of, consuming in order to fulfill this role that was deemed by society as to be her ideal role. Um, Cleanliness is one version of that. Another version of that could be motherhood and all of the things that a mother, feels the need to buy, for her children, for her family. Another one would be beauty work,
Mm.
all of the expenses that are a part of that, just to maintain even, if you're not even going extreme with it, if you're just, doing basic things, getting your hair done, nails, drugstore makeup, even like that's an expense that women take on that men don't even have. And then also like the time that goes into that, getting ready before you go to work, getting unready when you come home from work, all of the, trips to go to the makeup store, to go to the salon. That's just time that is adding up. And if time is your most precious resource, and time is, money, time is your life, um, these are all expenses that women are taking on. And there's a trade off there, right? Not only are they taking on these expenses, but they are then not able to say yes to other things. Investing could be one of them.
Mhm. So it's so funny that you use the 50s kind of as your backdrop or your example. In a previous episode where I'm talking about the economy of gender, there are a lot of things that lead to the financial uh, security, wellness, or expansion for women. Lots of things, right? And we can go back to World War One. We can go back into the late 1800s with educational and things like that. But there are certain things that happened in the 50s that changed the role of women. And I don't think the people that created it knew it would do that. The washing machine is a really good example, right? This was seen as a status symbol, but it also then reduced the amount of time that women were working on laundry. And so what then do they do with that time, right? And so there's all sorts of things that throughout history and innovation that maybe initially was seen as one thing, but then helped support and push forward another thing. The other thing about the 50s is I think it's where a lot of people, at least of my generation, look to, because when we grew up, we still had those, let's say, entertainment, those art forms, right? Movies, golden age of Hollywood, the TV shows that were still on, Ozzie and Harriet and Leave It to Beaver and things like that. And it really created this image of what a mother and or a woman was. And yes, you're completely right. Like the house had to be spick and span and clean. Dinner had to be served, right? A drink was ready when the man got home, his paper, like in the morning, all these like little nuances that were fed to us in the lexicon of pop culture. But there was also the appearance of a woman, the high heels, the lipstick, the coiffed hair. And I think some of us still romanticize that in a way, even the women, because women just look so put together and beautiful, the arched eyebrows of the 40s, right? And the pin curls and all of those things. And we look back and in some ways romanticize that time. And I think some of that romanticism comes from the the way in which pop culture was. Everybody saw the same things. Everybody had the same poster or the same TV show in their living room. And now it's so much more niched. And now sometimes you'll look at headlines and be like, I don't even know who that is, right?
All the time.
Suddenly I feel very old. Um, but there's this, I talk about this often in my keynotes. The thing that has happened for women over time is this ever evolving and boomerang of beauty ideals. And I think at the heart of everything that consumes us from a consumerism standpoint, it is beauty. If we're just going to put it out there, right? There's this ideal. It is typically an Anglo Saxon ideal. I don't even know if I used Anglo Saxon right. It's just white, right? There's this blonde haired, blue eyed white woman, right? Um, and I realize that both of us are blonde hair. I cannot tell what color your eyes are. But we theoretically fit into that kind of pop culture ideal. And so it then creates this goal of you have to look like that. And so when we think about the 50s, we could start earlier, but I think that's a good starting point. When we think about the 50s, it was a voluptuous woman. At least that's what they made us think it was because of the way that clothes were tailored and moved. When, we actually realize how tiny Marilyn Monroe was.
Yeah.
But it was this hourglass kind of Coca-Cola bottle shape
Mhm.
that was idealized. You move into the mid to late 60s and early 70s, and you get this real waif kind of look that comes into fruition with supermodels like Twiggy, right? And so now this look that you were attempting to attain in the 50s and early 60s, you have to completely change and move into this opposite direction to be seen as beautiful, of the moment, of the time, right? Then you go into the 80s and there's a slightly different look, right? We're getting Madonna, we're getting kind of this independent, freely expressing Cyndi Lauper Madonna look, right? And then the 90s go back again to heroin chic, Kate Moss. And then you get into this 2000 and even 2010s with Kim Kardashian, right? Now you're getting Brazilian butt lifts and all of those things. And now we're seeing a shift to this real skinny waif look again, which I'm not sure what we're calling it today, but it became very, very obvious in this award season that that shift had happened again. And it means that every 5 to 10 years as a woman, you have to completely throw away everything that you just spent 5 years collecting to fit the cultural norm and start over again. We got to do our makeup differently. We used to highlight, now we're not highlighting because it's over the top. We got a Brazilian butt lift and now we got to take them out, right? And there's just all these nuances for this ever-changing thing to make it so that we can never be good enough. And what that does is keeps us, for lack of a better expression, in our place. It's, I pause because it's infuriating. And yet I am victim to it. Uh, there are so many beauty products in my room right now, in probably multiple rooms, if I'm being honest, right? There's all sorts of things. So how do we feel good about ourselves when the world is telling us or sending us all these mixed messages about what we're seeing? And I realize you're not an expert in beauty and all of those types of things, but and when centuries have told us that the goal is the male gaze. Any comments on that or any thoughts?
Yes, so many, and actually, I'm going to start with the idea of the male gaze because I think that's one that it's so the way that we carry ourselves, the way that we do our hair and makeup and clothing, it's been presented to us as this ideal, right? But ideal defined by whom? By advertisers, which men, right? And so it's one of the things I hear a lot today, like, oh, I dress for myself, I dress for the girls, and there's still, and again, I do this myself as well. When you actually look at like the things that we're doing, it still very much is for the male gaze. We just internalized it.
Yeah.
Where did we learn that? If we lived in a forest without any mirrors or cameras, would I get my hair done? There's so many things that I would have no use for,
Yeah.
but in this world, I do. And I think it's an interesting question to think about, like, how can we feel good or how can we be okay in, a culture like this where we can recognize what's going on and yet even still participate in it.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if there's ever like a feeling good, you know? I don't know if we ever get to that point because it's so nuanced and there's pros and cons to all these different pieces, but I think at the end of the day, I think people make choices that are the best choice for them in a certain situation, and so there are a lot of situations I think where a woman might decide to conform to that ideal or to pursue an ideal or spend money on an ideal to achieve that image because it might actually be advantageous to her as an individual in that system, but it also at the same time perpetuates the system.
Yes, yes. And I love that. I think that's a really good. I was not, my brain was not working to get us there, and you just did it. And so I love that. It is about how we succeed in the system because there are, you can either work against the grain, work with the grain, or throw the grain out. None of those options are easy. And none of those options is the right or wrong answer depending on who you are. It is what, this is my opinion. It goes without saying that, but it's about what makes you feel right in your soul, right? And so if I want to wear red lipstick and that makes me feel good in my soul, stereotypes be damned and all of those things. But the system rewards, so we know that women are punished more in a corporate system for their looks, good, bad, or indifferent. You can be too fat, too skinny, too much makeup, not enough makeup, too provocative, not provocative. I'm saying it in such a lame way. The Barbie movie did it better, right? All of us women took this deep breath, bawled in the stands, because no matter what you choose, it will be wrong to somebody. And that is a really hard thing to grasp, because at the end of the day, if I'm in corporate America and I'm trying to grow my career, do I fight? Do I hold the status quo? Because I know that's going to work. And I have gone both ways. I very early, well, I'm just going to admit it. I'm a very casual kind of gal. Doesn't mean I cannot dress up. And actually, I love that in the moments. But my number one driver in life is, how am I going to be comfortable in my body? And that is both physical and psychological, right? And so I have had chronic illness my whole life, and it makes me uncomfortable in my skin. So a lot of times the trends or the things you're supposed to wear to work, nylons, tights. Like I used to work in a job where it was required to wear nylons and pumps, right? And they physically hurt my being. And so it was like, oh, I can't do that. Okay, I'll go into sports. I can wear yoga pants and sweats and it'll be great. And even though it was okay, it was used against me because of the casual nature of it. Why are you not dressing up more? Why are you not putting on makeup? Well, some days makeup for me was as if you were pouring acid on my skin. Like it just wouldn't work. Brushing my hair couldn't work. You could stand 5 feet away from me and I could feel the heat off your body and it would be painful for me. Right. And so I often got talked to about my appearance. Um, and what I would do. So I became a product whore, if you will, and I would research and buy any product that could solve these problems for me and make me fit into this ideal so that I could grow my career. And then in other instances, I fought against it. And I was like, no, screw it. I'm the smartest person in the room. And if they can't see that because I don't have red lipstick on, then screw them. Neither of those things worked for me. And while maybe not everybody has chronic illness and that's the reason for that challenge or that thing, I do think a lot of women can identify with not knowing where to go and what to do. As we talk about it from a wealth perspective, if we look at that thing that we keep talking about, 80% of all purchases are made by women, right? And I don't know the exact number here, but the majority of manufacturing and product production is done by men. And what that means is that for decades, centuries, probably since the beginning of time, products are not actually made to solve our problems. And it creates us as avid consumers, because when the first one doesn't meet our need, we'll try the next one and we'll try the next one and we'll try the next one. And so it keeps us in this pattern of spending. So we lift up an economy without our own wealth growing. So as a wealth manager and advisor, or just somebody who likes to talk about money, how do you how do you put those things together in a way where
Yeah.
I can spend and be and look and do whatever I want and whatever makes me feel comfortable, but I'm not falling prey to the system that's trying to keep me in my place financially?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a tough one. I haven't personally figured it out how to square those things. I think, to your point, trying to solve these problems aren't even true, real problems, right? They're problems that are not only like the products that are manufactured, but the problems are
Yes.
manufactured, and it's geared towards women, right? So when we see ads on TV, when we see products on the shelves, they all say things like, fix your crow's feet or like reverse aging, as if those things are bad or sinful
Mm,
or something to be corrected.
yeah.
And, it's so insidious. Like I don't even notice it as something other than a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't ever think of it as being something that I learned was a problem. It just is a problem.
Yeah.
I remember one day I was talking to a friend of mine, a male friend of mine, and I was complaining about having to do a whole foot treatment for the bottom of my feet that had calluses on them. And I was just like so annoyed. I had to go and, it's gonna take me this time. I need to go get this product. And he looked at me and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I've never even thought about the bottom of my feet." And there I was, and I realized I thought about it. I sat there and I just started getting so angry because I realized the amount of hours and money over my lifetime to that point that I had spent specifically for something about the bottom of my feet, a thing that had never once in his lifetime crossed his mind.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the first points that I started to get like really angry and really interested in these things that are a huge part of a woman's world
Yeah.
and don't even cross the threshold of something worth thinking about in a man's world. And I
Yes.
think that a lot of it is that external influencing, that marketing, that advertising that's driven by the producers of goods and services that are sold to women.
Yeah.
And I think one of the crazy things that we can see even is that as these problems are, as we take on these problems that are presented to us as shortcomings or um, um, things that we need to fix, they have products that they then sell you to fix that problem. It doesn't usually ever fix that problem, right? So you do the hamster wheel of let me try this other product, let me try this. There's got to be a solution, right? The problem there's got to be a solution, and you never really find it. You spend a ton of money and time and stress in the meantime, and then all of a sudden there's like new problems that weren't problems before.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on an example, but I remember very recently I saw an ad for some kind of a beauty product, and it was a totally new one. I was like, oh my gosh, like they're inventing problems as we go here. And again, if you're paying attention to these, you will see that they're geared towards women,
Yeah.
and that women are the ones who are spending their finite limited resources to try and just be good enough, right? It's not even like about becoming more beautiful. It's about fixing what's wrong with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's impossible.
it's typically it is men that are defining the problems. And so there's a double-sided issue there, right? So if a woman identifies a problem, so I'll use an example. So I used to work in sports, and I worked. I'll just say I worked for Oakley, right? And Oakley is a sunglass, mostly known as a sunglass brand. It's actually all sorts of consumer goods. It started with motorcycle grips, went into sunglasses, prescription eyewear, and then they have apparel and accessories and even footwear. And it's mainly known as a men's brand. It has a very strong connection to military, and police and all of those things. And so when I was there twice, and when I was there the first time, they were like, we need to have a women's line, because they didn't really have anything like that. And so they got some people together in the building and said, okay, here's your, and the beautiful magic of a company like Oakley and a lot of companies in their infancy or even adolescence, if you will, is that they say, hey, here's three things, could you go fix this for us? And these people get to be really ingenious and inventive and do stuff. And when you're in really big corporate, you can't move the ship that fast, right? So it was one of the cool things about working there. And so, women's line was developed. And then at one point in time, one of the people in product management came to the designers, who were all men. I don't want to say all because I don't know for sure, but I believe they were all men. I cannot think of a single female designer from a product perspective. We had graphic designers and stuff like that, but on the eyewear side, it was very male heavy. And they said, okay, here's the deal. And I wish I had a pair of sunglasses here to show you, but I'm going to use my glasses. When we wear a metal frame and we always put our sunglasses up on top of our head like this, right? And then when we take it out, oh gosh, our hair is getting stuck in those nose pads, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, this is a huge problem. If we could solve this for women, let me tell you. And I'm going to over dramatize the reaction, but they were like, no, 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 no. We are architects and designers. We've built cars and we use titanium and O metal and all these materials. We're not going to develop something so your hair doesn't get messed up. Move along. Now, again, I'm not quoting verbatim, right? I'm emphasizing or dramatizing for effect. But kudos to these women. They really pushed and pushed and pushed. And so somehow this happened. And they created these proprietary nose pads that would not snag your hair. And so I used to go to New York and I would do all these press briefings and tell all the media about the product. And I'm using this and I'm telling the story and I'm like, put them in your hair and test them out. And this one woman, I think she was from Women's Health magazine, and she had very curly hair. She's like, yeah. Don't put that in my hair. It's not going to work. I was like, trust me, trust me. And she does it. And her exact words were, holy shit, you're solving the world's problems. And we giggled, right? And I use this so much in my keynotes. Even though that's such a small thing, it's so rare when our needs are met in product development that when it does happen, it does feel like the world's problems are being solved, right? And it's this connection. Consumerism is not in its essence necessarily negative. It's only negative when it's targeted to create more consumerism because it's not solving our problems, right? So
Yeah.
if you can listen to your customers, take their needs and develop something without harming the world and the people around it and the people that work for you that meets their needs, beautiful things happen. Advancements happen, innovation happens. We as a global faction can do amazing things, but that doesn't happen. And instead, and you and I both talked about this, they say, oh, yeah, women are buying products. Let's put some pink on it. We'll make it smaller, not actually do any biometric research on a woman's body or all of those things. Let's make it smaller. And by the way, because women want this so bad and they are so silly, they won't know any better, let's put a 25% surcharge on it without them knowing and make it more expensive because they'll think that it's unique and it's special and all of these things, right? And then that is how our culture works. There are even tariffs in place that are created around women's products that they are taxed more. Therefore, that extra amount of money is passed on to us as a consumer, and it happens. I think a really good example of that is when Bic made pens for women and
Did
all
they?
they did. This is, gosh, I maybe 10 years ago. Bic came out with a line of pens for women and they were pastel in color and they were smaller. And even the commercials, you can go YouTube it and figure out. Ellen did a really hilarious bit about it because she was like, oh, my dainty hands just could not hold a regular pen. Like it was so much. And it's like everything has to be infantilized almost to target at a woman.
Mhm.
And by the way, these companies do get growth out of it. Growth exists, but the growth does hit a ceiling because we are not dumb. When we try the products, it doesn't work. I'm not going to buy it again, right? And so it creates a cyclical nature. Imagine how much money, effort, and resources would be saved by an organization and the consumer and grow our economy if they just listened, invited women to the table, and said, let's solve some problems. And I just talked for a really long time. I'm so passionate about this because it it not only does it infantilize women, it underestimates what they do for the world. And it takes away our ability to think that we can invest, to think
Mm.
that we can be I'm going to use the word selfish, even though I don't agree that's the right word. Be selfish and buy for ourselves and not have guilt associated. Because the other thing those products do is they make us feel guilty,
Yeah.
right? And so there's shame and there's, oh my gosh, I bought these things. Now, modern culture is advertising to us in a different way. It is an algorithm that is built to not care whether we need or desire a product, but to use color, sound, buttons, patterns to just convince us to buy things we don't need. And they go against what we care about in the world. So when I think about this, I think about it in terms of global warming and the health of our planet. So rampant consumerism. A lot of people like to say it's farting cows and meat, but rampant consumerism is destroying our planet. We develop all of these products and then they go into landfills in countries we don't see and we ignore, and they're destroying the planet. Ask any woman if she cares about the planet. A huge majority will tell you it's one of their biggest issues, especially in these younger generations. And so we're fighting against our own interests. Why do you think that is?
Why do I think that is? I I think, you know, women might not even consider that they have a choice or that they that they're between a rock and a hard place. They're trying to meet this standard, right? This ideal, this cultural ideal, the impossible standard that requires them to spend while also putting, the earth stake. It is impossible, right? It is an impossible thing to do, or we can be again a part of a system, recognize the problem, and yet still might not be able to extract ourselves from participating in it.
Do you think part of that is because it's so hard to know in a culture that says fake media, it's hard to know where to get the facts?
Ooh, that yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. I think if we think about, each person kind of being like a sponge, like we're soaking up information, that creating our map of the world of life, and then we're acting on it. Whatever it is that you're soaking in, wherever you're getting your information, wherever you're getting, advertisements, where are you getting all of the inputs that are telling you that you need to do this to fix this, and all of the instructions you're being given. I think we very much are being molded by the information around us.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
think
go ahead, sorry.
but I was gonna say, I think, with some of these things that I think about them a lot and can't ever come to a good answer of, like, how do I fix the
Mhm.
problem within me, right? How do I, like, let go of the beauty ideal, and how do I stop spending so much money on beauty products and live a freer life? And at the same time realize that there are certain ways in which I benefit from doing those things. Like, trying to square them, I just can't, and I think, at least for me, the best I can do at this moment is, like, just starting to have an awareness of
Mhm.
it, and when you start to have an awareness of it, like, then you start to get even more mad. Like, I remember
Yes.
I went through a period of time a couple of years ago where I started keeping a spreadsheet, tracking all the time that I was, like, blow drying my hair, taking a shower, going to, the store to go get, makeup, and I was tracking it, and after a couple weeks of doing this, and this was insane, I was, like, every couple of minutes, having to write it in my spreadsheet. I just had to stop because the amount of time that I was starting to look at was so much
Mhm.
that it was demoralizing,
Yes.
where, like, I was just, like, thinking about it constantly, and it was, like, super depressing because I started to really, like, wake up to it, and I couldn't really see a good way out.
I do think too, I think there's 2 elements. I don't even know if my mom listens to this, and she might hate it that I am talking about her, but my mom and my grandmother wake up, I mean, my grandmother's passed, my mom is not, wake up every single day and put on a full face of makeup and do their hair, even if they do not leave the house, even if and when they are sick as a dog. I do not do this. I have been unemployed for 2 years. I'm putting makeup on if a human that I care about is going to see me, and if I'm doing something like this. But And I've sort of always been that way, and I think that has to do with chronic illness is you like, what can I withstand today? But I've also noticed a change as I age. When I hit 40, honestly, and I've heard other women say this, I suddenly felt very invisible in the world. Now, there is some negatives to that, but there's some really cool positives. If no one is looking at me anyways, I can go places and it doesn't really matter if I'm meeting a beauty ideal or not. As long as I don't smell or look like I'm gonna um, be contagious, right? Then I can move around in these ways that I didn't I used to feel like everyone was looking at me and judging me and doing all these things. And now it's like, well, they don't look at me. And on one hand, that can be a little depressing because you lose this I don't know if it's real or imagined, but the power of being a woman is sometimes in the male gaze, right? And how people look at you. But also it gives me this freedom to just be okay being who I am and being in the moment and not worrying, not having my looks or my outward uh appearance be the be all end all of how I start and end my day, right? It's just like, okay, I'm here. And
Yeah.
it's so funny. I was at a Fred Meyer's, it's a local store, and I was going to the beach for the day by myself. So no makeup, like sweatpants. My hair was in a hat, right? And I was literally going and I just needed a little fire starter for my fire pit. And I'm walking by, and this man gets so uncomfortably close to me, walking opposite of me, like brushing my ear almost with his lips.
Mm.
So gross. And he goes, "Damn, girl." And I was like, this is not a damn girl moment. First of all, you're like 30 years younger than me. And I am not in a damn girl moment. I'm good. Don't get me wrong. I'm cute whether I have all this put on me or not. But it was not a damn girl moment. So why don't we just move aside? And that moment, I literally called my sister in the parking lot. I was like, "You will never believe what just happened to me." A man has not approached me in easily 20 years, like in public. Like, so it was very shocking. But also, it was like, it really just doesn't matter, does it? If they're right, like if there's somebody that's gonna appreciate what you have, even if it's for the wrong reason, right? And so having the freedom to be just loose with whatever it is in terms of beauty and whatever it is, I think that's a part that's one of the steps. And it's unfortunate that it takes age to get it. Because imagine if we had that when we were 20 and we did look like we look like we're 20. Why did I think I needed all this extra stuff? I was
Mm.
broken, right? Like
Mhm.
it's all perspective in life that gives it to you and understanding what that looks like. And so I think too, it's getting right with yourself, knowing what's important to you, and having a community around you that supports that. And then realizing, and this is where the wealth comes in, how much power we actually have as women that we just either don't fully realize or thought we needed permission to exercise. And then you start to make buying decisions that are still do you, boo, but maybe have more responsibility to them. I shop a lot of vintage and secondhand instead of big bucks. I now do not purchase from any, I don't want to say that because that's hard. A lot of the billionaire corporations, I no longer subscribe to. The amount of time that is freed up on my day, the amount of money that has kept in my bank account, because none of it I needed. And I actually don't feel worse for the wear. Now I can go to the local hardware store. I can go to the local plant shop. the, woman who bakes cookies out of her home and sells them in a cart or something like that. I can still consume and get that little, we talked in a previous episode about men and adrenaline and risk. I do think there is an adrenaline burst when I shop. I feel powerful when I buy because I have the ability to buy, and I
Mhm.
didn't always.
Mhm.
And that might be the thing that gets us is like, oh, I can do this. So when you work with money, women and money, and I'm going to say it this way, you start to get their finances right, if you
Okay.
will.
Mhm.
Do you see that? Do you see that there's an adrenaline rush from knowing what their financial situation looks like? Do you see an adrenaline rush from being like, "Ooh, that's more money than I thought I have. I can go on this vacation or I can do X, Y, and Z." Like, do you see that in the way that women present with you?
You know what? It's interesting. I would say more, they have getting their money right, having their plan in order, giving them that feeling of security and peace. You see kind of like a relaxing, like, "Okay, I feel so much better."
Uh,
Um, I know personally what you mean by that, like, dopamine rush,
Yeah.
because I get it. Like, and there's something that I, for some reason, I'm just really stuck on. I really wanna have this, this item, and not something that I actually need, but it feels like a need, and when I finally decide, "Okay, I'm gonna get it," there's a moment there where it's, like, euphoric,
Yeah.
and then that probably is the best part of that entire, experience, 'cause, eventually it'll I'll either, it's wrapped up, I take it home or arrive in the mail, and maybe there's an exciting moment when you get it home and you look at it.
Yeah.
But then a couple days later, a couple weeks later, at some point in time later, I will have forgotten I have that
Yeah.
object. I will be thinking about a new object with the same idea of, if I can only get this,
Yep.
then I will that feeling of want, need, desire will be fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
it's
it's
so
also like
temporary.
preparation. Like women are much better preppers, right? Is
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, oh, I need these things in case this, right? So it's like we're preparing for
Yes.
whatever it
Yes.
is. And also this, so one of the things, it's gonna sound like it doesn't belong, but I used to be this big Oprah girl when I was younger. And she always said this thing that she felt like your home should rise up to greet you. It was like a
Mm,
saying she said often, and it was very big to me. My home is or my space has always been very important to me because it's where I feel safe. So let me make sure it's a reflection of me. But back then, even though I thought I was doing that, it was a reflection of the world around me. What's hot right
mm,
now? What color should
mm,
it be? At this stage in my life, my home is 100% a reflection of me. It's things I've collected on the way. It's not the, you know, I want to be careful in saying brands. It's not the well-known brand's pillow or something like that. It's
mm,
the little, piece of artwork that I picked up in this tiny little haven on one of my travels that doesn't mean anything to anybody else and you won't see in anybody else's house. And so I changed my perspective and said, I want someone to come in my home and be able to say, "Oh, I can tell that this is Dawn's home, or I can learn a lot about her from being here, even though I don't have pictures of people or me all over the house. It's just things that remind me of being safe and being happy. And I think if we adjust our consumerism to that, like I love repurposed things because I feel like there's a story there. And
mm,
I get to continue that story in something I have. I have a pineapple brass door knocker on my door. These things go for hundreds of dollars. I found it at the Laurelhurst garage sale for 25 cents. And honestly, when I bought my home for 5 years, that was my proudest possession. And it's so small, but it meant something to me that I could carry on this tradition of welcoming people in my home in such a beautiful way. And that's the way I want to approach consumer. I wanna vote with my wallet, right?
uh-huh,
So, And by the way, this is hard.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't want to buy from a company, person, or brand that doesn't have my best interest at heart. So if you donate to campaigns politically that don't align with my value set, I'm going to do whatever I can not to buy from you. Right. And it used to be easier. It's way harder now because of the condensing of
Mhm.
corporations,
Yeah.
but it means something to me. And people think it doesn't matter because I'm one consumer who doesn't make millions of dollars. It matters because we are a collective force. Women are the largest collective force in the world. And if we could figure out how to unify in our best interests, and if it starts with our money, I think it all starts with our money.
Mhm.
We can shout, protest, put little quips on social media, you know, talk about it with our friends. But at the end of the day, I am going to say one company because I don't care. If at the end of the day, if I shout about my rights and then I am driving a Tesla, I'm not judging anybody who owns one, right? But my purchasing doesn't align with my values. So I'm telling companies, corporations, and politicians, I value that enough to say something, but I don't value it enough to do something about it. And that is where wealth comes into play. In the world, and I'm not going to give an exact number, the average American family in the world, family of four, makes less than $40,000 a year, which means by comparison, if you make more than that, you are wealthy in the scope of the world. And if we reframe wealth with that as a seed, it's powerful because the world tells us we don't have enough. We don't, right? Like, I don't know where
Yeah.
I'm circling to that from a
Yeah.
wealth conversation, but you start to realize that your money can do more than you think it can.
Mhm. Mhm.
I talked way too much in this episode and I did not allow you to talk enough. I feel awful about it, but clearly I just get very ramped up about this subject. So I want to at least give you some time and say, when you are talking to women about wealth or building their portfolio, I think some people might get turned off by wealth because they just don't think they're wealthy. So I hope they think about that $40,000 number and realize that it's all wealth after that. How, even if it doesn't feel like it, because trust me, I couldn't live off $40,000 in this country, in this city, in this state that I live in. How do you how do you get them to feel good about their wealth, about preparing for the future, but how do you get them to feel good about their financial consumption in the present?
Mm.
Like, how do you advise them on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
So that money's not the enemy and
Yeah.
money is not the downfall or hurdle.
Yeah, yeah. That makes me think of a lot of conversations that I see, let's say just for example, like women in the workforce, right? And they, maybe they're changing jobs or they're up for a raise, and there's an opportunity there for them to have an increase in income, and an opportunity by which they might have an opportunity to negotiate and ask for more or demand more. And there's often hesitance by women to ask for more or to ask for a raise, um, because it feels greedy. It feels selfish. But at the same time, we could look at, if you're caretaking for, a family, could we not say that it's noble for you to be able to have resources to be able to
Mm,
take better care of your family? We can say yes to both of those things, that a woman might feel guilty about wanting more money if it's for herself, but if it's for somebody else, it can feel like having more money is good and noble.
mm.
And I think there's a disconnect there with how, women view our own economic power and our own value versus our value in what we can do for others. And I think it comes down to, reflection and awareness and, kind of digging back these layers and starting to see like what what is it that I want in my life and what is it like what things does my money do for me or what things could my money do for me? Voting with your dollars. I think that is probably the best way to vote in any way, shape, or form. The best way to shape the future is to do that because the literal bottom line is what matters
Yeah.
in our world. Um, but I think to really dig down to as humans, we want safety, security, food, housing. We want that for our loved ones. And are we not should we not be our most loved one,
Mhm.
right? We've been given this one opportunity in this life to steward and take excellent, exquisite care of one being. That is your one job is to take exquisite care of this being. Should we not do that? Should we not want to do that? And by having additional resources, we're able to do that. And by doing that, by taking care of this being, that being is able to take care of other beings and, in a kind of a trickle effect, take care of the world, right?
Mm.
But I think it's tough because I think it comes at the reframing of everything that, you know, we've come to believe about ourselves, our worth, our value in this culture. I think too that the power of women and the power of money, the power of investing, it is so powerful that I think it also is one of the driving forces with all the opportunities that are there to drain women of these resources and drain them of their time. Because I think if we do, figure out ways to collaborate and work together with other women, one incredibly powerful force, right? Who even knows what we're capable of? We don't know yet, right? We haven't seen it, but there's so many other forces at work to try to prevent that from happening because of the fact that we are so powerful. And I think the more that we can recognize that we do have agency, that we are wealthy, even though we might not feel like it because we're being told that we have to do all these things and all this money just to be good enough. If we can maybe learn to turn that off or put that down for a moment and realize all the resources that we do have, I think that can be a paradigm shift, but it really does take stepping away from all these, information points that are coming at us and that we're being soaked in the water that we swim in. How do we put that down or step away from that or take a moment to even look at it and say, is this real? Is this something that I need? Who is sending me these messages? Like, who is I'm feeling a lack in some way of myself, but like, is that actually a lack in myself, or who is telling me this? Like, who is this message coming from, and who does it benefit? I
Yeah.
think that's what has helped me a lot is if I can think for a moment to do this, which is rarely, but like behind any message, who benefits from this? And it's almost never me, right? It's something bigger up the line, and I think in those moments, if I do have a pause, that can actually help me to reroute where I'm about to put my money because I suddenly realize, oh, like this choice that I'm about to make that I feel like is empowering for me isn't at all. And in fact, it's in support of something that I don't want to participate in.
Yeah. It's like, is it feeding you or is it starving you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah. And something that came across to me, I imagine that is really big in your work is you often have to reframe, or I'll use the word reframing, though it's been the magic word. Somebody could play a drinking game from how many times we've used it, but um, shame and guilt around wanting more than what you have, especially if wanting more than what you have is outside of what people told you you deserve.
Mhm, mhm.
Do you think that's a big part of what you do? Like underlying, obviously, it's not, the numbers and all that kind of good stuff that you've trained for and studied for. But I imagine there's an element of that.
Yeah, I think big time. I think big time. I think that's a huge part of our culture, and I think that's often why when let's say I have a new client, and it's often a woman who's going through some period of transition, divorce, that's something that's really hard, and all of a sudden she's presented with the first time in her life, in her 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, with being the person to manage her money. Why is it that it's only up until that point that she's been given that opportunity or
Mm,
given that empowerment to do so because of all of the things in life that have essentially told her, made her believe that that's not for her.
mm,
And I think, our world, it's not built for women.
mm,
It's not built for us, right? It's been built by men. I mean, talking earlier about like products, product development, even like medications, cars, there's all these things that are built with, the male body in mind when they do all the testing and all the studies. And those products of medication actually can manifest in um, hurting women. They're not built for women, right? Say
yeah,
you have a car that, you do the crash testing and if you're not using women's, measurement when taking that into account, like you could have a car crash and the seat belts, the airbags don't do what they're supposed to do because they were never designed
yeah,
for women. And I think that we come across these things that are not designed for women all the time. I mean, thinking about women in the workforce, right? Women are so much more likely to take time out of the workforce, right? To care for children, to care for aging parents. And then, you know, many of them don't get back into the workforce. Many of them, when they do, not at the same type of role that they were at before.
yeah,
And that's just considered normal and totally okay in our society. Even so much so that a woman could be in a job, maybe she hasn't had any kids yet, um, but without it ever being said out loud, she is likely to be assumed to be taking on those roles at some point in the future and to look at it as an opportunity for someone, in her workplace. She's much less likely to get that opportunity because she's seen as a less good investment,
yeah,
right? Because she's
viable
more
investment.
likely to leave. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And so I think we really are working within a system that to this point has not been made for women, right? But the only way to do anything about that is, what cards do I hold? What wealth do I have? What resources do I have? Time, energy, money, my voice, how I spend,
Mhm.
and what can I do with them?
Yes, yeah. And,
Yeah.
to that, I think people, the crash test dummy is a really good example. Uh, Medical testing is a really great example because between the ages of 12 and like 55 or 60, medical testing has traditionally not been done at all for any medications on women because they deemed us uh, the word is escaping me. Our hormones are so in fluctuation just from a purely minute by minute, hour by hour
Yeah.
basis
Yeah.
that they could never get a baseline, right?
Yeah.
And so they just didn't do it. And what that means to me is that people move away from things that they don't understand. And what I'm hearing you say, and what I think, even in our past episode, is we should move closer to the things we don't understand and seek that understanding so that we can use that as power to grow whatever that is that we have. If it's our wealth, if it's uh, our confidence, right? Our security, those types of things. It's moving closer to the things we don't understand, to understand them in ways that we can solve for, fix them, or make the best decision for ourselves about how we navigate them.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a beautiful, articulate way of putting it all together. Um, yes, knowledge is power, right? By understanding better how things work, you can then make a more informed decision. You can better your own life. You can better the lives of those around you. You can use your money. Let's say that you learn a little bit more about the power of, compound interest over time, right? You can then start to leverage these resources in your life for your long-term benefit that had you not had that information or had you felt disempowered from it, you might not ever do so. And so I do think that the more that we can move closer to the things we don't understand and, move our world, the other people in our lives closer to things that they don't understand, that as a whole, as a society, as a world, we will all be able to do better. But I think that the things that we don't understand scare us, right? We might feel like, you know, I don't understand anything about it, therefore, like it's not for me. I'm not smart enough. I'm not capable. And that negative, self-talk, or not even self-talk, it could be talk from anywhere. Those negative thoughts um, hold us back from really the things that might set us free.
You know, I will say that this is 100% what unemployment has been for me. I can honestly say that no matter what my success was, deep down, I really thought very poorly of my abilities to do or be good at anything. And during this time, I had so much time on my hands that I had never had before. I've been working since I was 9. Like, I just didn't. And I just started trying things not to be good, but just to use up some time in the day that wasn't about watching true crime, right? Or wasn't watching the destruction of the world around me. It was
Yeah.
really working on mental health. It started with coloring books, but then I was like, I don't have any money to buy wrapping paper. I've got butcher paper and I've got markers. Let me make my own wrapping paper, right? Like it just built. And then I was like, I didn't even know I could uh, draw a stick figure. And holy crap, I just drew a Minecraft piece for my little nephew. And like it started to give me this confidence that I didn't have to be the best. But if I didn't try, I didn't know where my capabilities lied. And what a crazy thing to be introduced to in your late 40s. Like, oh my gosh. And then people be like, oh my gosh, you're so good. You should sell that on Etsy. I'm like, girl, it took me 9.5 hours to draw that one little tiny thing. This is not a viable business. It was very hard, but I did something. I tried something. And then I could say, I tried it. I didn't really enjoy it. It was no longer about whether I was good or bad. It was about whether I enjoyed it and whether it fed me. So again, going back
Yeah.
to, does it feed you or does it starve you? And that's
Yeah.
where I'm centering all of my choices now, is what feeds me. And this leads me to the last question for you. You had said the more you were reading, the more you got educated in this concept of feminism, or I don't even know if we can call it feminism, just understanding the role of women in the world and
Yeah.
gender. In that research, it's easy to get angered.
Yeah.
What brought you joy in it? And what brings you joy in now leading from this perspective of helping and empowering women?
Yeah. I mean, look at where we are today. I mean, I'm obviously in a very privileged position being in a country where I have my own job, I can have my own bank account, I can live by myself, I can not have children if I choose
Mhm.
not to. Those things are, you know, a lot of women, many, many women in the world today don't have access to those things, right? But I do because of the change that has occurred over time. So looking back at history and like reading these books that talk about, the history of women in the world, what it used to be versus what it is now is like, whoa, there have been major changes, right? And that is what shows me very clearly like women are very powerful. And look at all these forces, all this energy that is being utilized to try and keep women from empowering themselves, right? And so I think what it is like seeing this unused, untapped resource.
Mm,
Women have yet to see what we can like truly, truly like affect in the world because it's always been spent on all these other things that are taking our energy. It's like if you're a light bulb versus a laser, right? Like all of the things in our life are taking our energy to, be a good mother, be a good wife, be, beautiful enough, be productive, be somebody volunteer, do all these things, give, be productive for everything else except for you yourself. And what would it look like in the world if we like said, you know what, I'm gonna recall all my energy and all my power back to me, and I'm going to, start to, connect with the women around me, and we're all gonna do that together. And then we're going to like plot a course, and we're gonna like send our energy and our power as a laser. Like, what would the world look like? I don't know, but I want to find out.
yes. Oh, I just love it so much because this is where I'm at. My sole purpose and passion in life is to not only feed myself, but to feed other women and let them know how powerful, beautiful, magnificent, and unique they are, and how important it is that we have that in the world. And if I can do that, I have to be an example of that. So that means I have to go through the trenches and I have to do the work and I have to believe in myself and I have to allow for myself and be graceful with myself. Because if I'm not, and I'm just telling other women to do it, but I don't do it for myself or I don't believe in it for myself, I'm not an example. I'm not a light bulb or a laser. I'm a dark room. I'm a cautionary tale. And I don't want to be a cautionary tale. I'm tired of the history books. When we do have a story, it's always sad. We're addicted to true crime and it's all about crimes against women. I don't want that. So how do I get on the offensive rather than the defensive in lifting up and empowering other women? And I give you so much love, light, and respect for doing that yourself, because wealth is one of the most important ways to do that for women. So choosing to work in an organization that is started and led by women and choosing to focus on empowering women in their wealth is such a gift you are giving to the world. And I think it's beautiful. I'm motivated by it. I'm inspired by it. And I'm just so grateful that you would give us your time to help do that in this space.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on here. I think that, the yeah, the best thing that we can do as women for women and girls is to talk about it with them, to share information,
Yeah.
right? And that's exactly what you are doing with your platform. That is the best thing that can possibly be done to move us forward in that direction. So I appreciate so much what you're doing. I think it's awesome and very exciting. And it's been an absolute joy to be on here with you today.
Awesome. Well, come back anytime. If there is ever something you're like, girl, let me tell you what I have learned about wealth and money that we need to spread to the masses, you know how to get a hold of me, and let's do it and put it out there. We will again put GIna's information and Vision Capital Management's information in the blog and the show notes. So if you all want to get in touch and not only move your financial wellness forward, but do it with women who maybe have a better understanding of your unique circumstances and desires and will be a safe space for you to land, please reach out. And until next time, we can't wait to talk to you on Wait, Hold Up, What?